Welcome to the Business Growth Spotlight, where we shine the light and talk with business leaders from all over the world who are here sharing their expertise and wisdom so we can all grow together. I'm your host, Heidi Schalk, co-founder of HLH Growth Solutions, where we help businesses scale through strategic visibility and automated systems. If you're new to the podcast, welcome to the show. We're glad to have you here. You're in for a real treat with my special guest today, Michael Becker with Identity Praxis. So welcome, Michael, to the show.
Hey there. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. So before we dive in, Michael, I'm just going to give everybody a little background about you.
Sounds good.
So Dr. Michael Becker, his work focuses on a simple yet vital shift of moving organizations away from transactional thinking, where people and data are treated like one-off numbers to be processed, and toward relational approaches that build genuine trust and lasting connections. He helps leaders and teams clear the noise, manage their transformation better, and make decisions that actually lead to meaningful results. As the founder of Identity Praxis, an educator at Cal Poly Pomona and National University, and a strategic leader, Dr. Becker has spent over 2 decades helping people navigate how technology changes the way we work, think, and solve problems together. So, Michael, you often say your work, as you shared in the bio, sits at the intersection of marketing, identity, data, AI, and emerging technology. But ultimately, it's about preserving human agency. So can you dive a little deeper into that? What does that mean?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest challenges we're faced right now, especially as we become more and more technically aligned and technically focused, this ability for us to have agency, for us to be able to choose and make choices on our individual behalves, and to have sovereignty about those choices is becoming increasingly more and more crucial. And when we take a step back and you look at the kind of four intersections that I focus on is AI, and personal knowledge management and organizational knowledge management, self-sovereign identity and data, and then engagement, this kind of AKA business strategy marketing. And then those four pillars rest on education and then context and condition setting for each market and domain that a company may be in. And then holistically, I look at that overarching architecture and I reflect back and I think what we need is what I'm calling relational technology architecture. We need to figure out how do we actually start interacting and relating with each other better, not just as humans, but also with our non-human agents and our non-human representatives, aka the AI agents that are coming rapidly into all of our lives. So we can untease and unpack all of that, but it really just comes back down to this idea of in a phygital world, and that word phygital was coined back in around 2012, not by me, but I love it, is this idea of physical and digital. We are no longer just physical beings, and because we have a corporeal physical presence, we're not just digital beings. We are in fact both. We are both physical and digital, and we need to effectively learn how to manage our lives within that context. And with that becomes a whole new realm of self-sovereign agency tools that we need to be adopting both professionally and personally.
Mm. So you mentioned the 4 pillars around relational technology, or with artificial AI, identity and data sovereignty, knowledge management, and engagement and value exchange. Can you
Mhm.
walk us through those 4 pillars and explain why they're becoming so important for organizations?
Yeah, absolutely. And let's take a step back and kind of deconstruct some of them. And one thing I want to be really clear is, and it's quite interesting. We all talk about AI and it's the new rage. This ChatGPT thing shows up a few years ago, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, this is so exciting," or it's, "Oh my God, this is so scary," and there are people today that just like, "I'm not going to use AI. That's frightening," and there are other people that are just all in, which is equally as frightening in many ways. Like, can you actually, take a step back and think about what you're doing? So, in this idea of AI, one thing we need to think about, if you can interrupt on me because I might sometimes have a tendency to put my professorial hat on,
Okay.
and if I start pontificating, just stop me and take a breath and let's pause, right? But in this context of AI, I think it's really important that we take a step back and we ask ourselves, what in fact is it? And AI is at its simplest level today is it's math. It's a probability engines. that take content, take information, and then do something with that with a probabilistic determination. And in that context, I think it's important for us to understand there's two general camps. Now,
Mm.
one, and again, if you get all academic, there can be three, there can be four, there can be six, but let's just stay with the two big ones. There's deterministic AI and there's generative AI. And when most of us think about AI, we're thinking about generative AI. We're thinking about AI, Claude and Gemini and ChatGPT and Perplexity are kind of like the Copilot. Those are like the big five. And we're thinking about these generative tools that we're using to produce output for us. Deterministic AI is actually the AI that became before generative AI, and that's the AI that stays within its box. So deterministic AI is what makes self-driving cars do what they do, right?
Mm.
You stay within the lane. When grandma's crossing the road, don't run her over. When the light turns red, stop. So when you see these deterministic patterns, I want you to take these actions. That's what a deterministic AI does. And then you have a new category of AI that's emerging, which is crucially important for us to be aware of, which is agentic AI. And agentic AI takes the deterministic models and the generative models, and then it allows the AI to then take action. And that AI can take action in a number of different contexts. It can take action for me and on my behalf, as determined by me, and it can take action as a result of its own decisions. So it can take autonomous action or directed action, and that's what an AI agent does. Is it goes off and does something for you, aka it's
Mhm.
agentic. That's what we mean by that. And so when we talk about AI, that's what we mean by at a very high level. That's what AI means to me, and that's what it does. And what's so important when we think about this, and this will help me then get to the other pillars of my business. So that kind of definition of AI is crucial. And one thing to keep in mind too, this idea of AI is not it wasn't invented 3 years ago. Like we've
Right.
been doing this for 30, 40, 50 years. This has been under development for a long time, and it really hit productive use in the United States, at least in developed markets around 2010. And a lot of my more thoughtful thinking, will often refer to this idea that around 2010 is when we moved from cause and effect based societal decision making to correlation based societal decision making. And now that's just happening on steroids because of the rapid deployments that's happening with AI. But from a conceptual perspective, this idea of AI is available all the way back in the 70s when this guy named Willis Ware was evaluating and supporting the US government in developing the 1974 Privacy Protection Act. He had actually written in a white paper that said, people, humans, us individuals, aka consumers, we actually need a digital ombudsman to be able to represent us to the market because this market is getting so complex and we need something to help protect our privacy and protect our data and protect our identities and but we don't have the technology for that. And so fast forward 50 years, we do now. That technology is a digital representative for us to actually read terms and conditions for us, to be able to interact with us and take action on our behalf. And so that's a whole new category of AI outside of the business use case modeling of AI to what's lovingly being called right now personal AI, digital twins. And
Mhm.
so we're going to get AI implementations, both from a company perspective and from an individual perspective, where that digital twin will be representing me publicly and taking action on my behalf. Could be as simple as going and buying those plane tickets for me or negotiating whether or not I should agree to the terms and services of that website. So there's just a
Mhm.
whole bunch of stuff that's happening in this world of AI, and we could spend the next 10 hours just talking about that. So
Right.
if we then think about then what are the boundary layers that we manage within the context of AI? And this is crucially important for any business executive that might be listening to our conversation and trying to think about how do I kind of navigate the waters of where we're going to in the future. The three primary boundary lens of AI are the relational boundary, the environmental boundary, and the sovereignty boundary. And what I mean by that, the relational boundary is this AI private, intrapublic, or public? Meaning, is this AI representing me and accessible to anybody in the public? Is it accessible only amongst our team, such as like an an intercompany AI that the whole team is using, or is that AI simply private for me, like my personal therapist? Right, my
Mm.
digital AI therapist that then that with that AI, I'm going to say all of this stuff and we don't want anybody else to know about it, right? So that's kind of like the three relational sides. Is it private, interpublic, or public? Then you have the environmental boundary of AI. And the environmental boundary is where does the compute live? Where does the data live? Where does the analysis live? And we hear about data centers and all of this stuff, but at a very high level, that environmental boundary of AI is either private or excuse me, is either local, meaning on my computers to which I own, underneath my desk in my office, as an extreme example of local. It is hybrid or it's in the cloud. And if it's off in the cloud, by definition, what that means is that compute is existing on some other company's computer.
Mm.
And that could either be on one extreme, OpenAI or Chat or Claude or Gemini, or on the other extreme, an AWS, Cloud, Azure deployment where I've gone and spent a bunch of money to put my code into, say, a Microsoft Azure or Amazon the web services environment, and I'm the one controlling all of that code and all of the behaviors that are happening within that cloud. But that is nonetheless still the cloud. I'm still My data is still out there on somebody else's computers and out of my control, and that poses a number of different risks. So when we're thinking about AI, we've got this relational boundary, environmental boundary, and then we have the sovereignty boundary. And this brings me to the identity pieces. Sovereignty is a crucial concept that we need to be knowing in the marketplace right now. And what sovereignty basically means is control. And do I have control over the behaviors of that AI? Do I have control over the identity of that AI? Do I have control of who gets to access that AI? Do I have control over the delegated authority of what that agent's allowed to do or not? And there's a whole huge movement in the marketplace right now called self-sovereign identity movement, which was established by Christopher. It's been, again, like anything, it's been around for decades, but it's now productively happening right now in the marketplace. And from a sovereignty scale, it's either none, you have no sovereignty, or it's complete cryptographic control, where you have complete technological, systemic, trusted cryptographic control and sovereignty over that data. So if you look at that matrix, sovereignty, relational, environmental, it's kind of a cube. You then can map everything that's happening in AI, where up in the open AI environment, the only thing that's protecting your data is a username and password. Whereas down in the small left column, where it's local, private, and sovereign, I've got an encrypted server underneath my desk and I have complete control over it. So that's kind of the infrastructural models that we're playing around with AI, which then brings me to the next pillar, which is organizational personal knowledge management. And this is incredibly crucial because AI at its highest level is fundamentally just, as I said, predictive compute. Feed in some stuff, the large language models, the small language models spit out the next best guess or next best decision of what it should be doing with the particular environment it's got. But we as muggles aren't in control of those models. Those models have been trained on billions and billions of pieces of data, but they're not necessarily acting on our behalf. We actually need to feed them our local context and our local insights. And that's where knowledge management comes into play. So organizations need to be thinking about, and there's two elements to that knowledge management realm in the context of AI and or just my own or anybody's own personal work. In the AI language, it's RAG, retrieval augmented database, or a generator, and knowledge graphs, right? And in that context, how are you as a company organizing and managing your knowledge in two very, very distinct ways? And I've got a framework I call the 5 C's of knowledge manager around this, which I'll happily convey. But the fundamental point is, who are you speaking to when you're producing information and when you're producing knowledge? Is that knowledge being used to talk to another human like Heidi? And then what context am I doing that? Is it verbal like you and I are doing now? Is it written? Is it presentation? Is it some combination thereof? Is it on demand? Is it live? That's a whole part of knowledge delivery, what I call the contributions of the 5 C's. Or are you speaking to the AI? Are you actually speaking to a machine? And what we're learning is the way you speak, either to a human or to the AI, are totally different. The underlying fundamental content is the same, but the way you package up the information and the way you publish it and the way you destroy it is very different. And if you're, I don't want to say smart, but if you are thinking about this at this level of detail, companies can get exceptionally efficient with their
Mhm.
employees and with their executives and with their capabilities, in that they can, do what I call the separation, appearance, design framework. They can have their content independent of structure and design. So at that point, when they're ready to go contribute, when they're ready to create and go contribute their knowledge, they can on the fly basically say this information, this knowledge is now being presented to a human, and this information is now being presented to an AI or some kind of programmatic system or some kind of workplace pipeline to be able to efficiently allow us to run our business. And so that ability to manage that knowledge management layer is exceptionally crucial. And most of us are not doing the appropriate amount of effort that is required to think that through. And no disrespect to our office suites of software, Google Docs, Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint pages, and all that. The problem with those tools is those tools are designed for creating content in output versus creating content in input. So there is an entirely new approach that we need to take to knowledge management, which then brings us to the next pillar, which is self-sovereign identity and data. And what we are learning today is in the marketplace today, the vast majority of our identity is a username or password or some proxy representative, say a phone number or an
Mhm.
email address, or maybe some representative of our driver's license or passport number or something of that nature. But we as individuals, we as independent humans with sovereignty and agency have absolutely no control over those systems. And so over the last 20, 30 years, and is now being driven through massive regulatory frameworks around the world, we now have what's called self-sovereign identity, also implemented as known as verified credentials or decentralized identifiers. It's a new layer that's being added to the internet that will give us, as human individuals, cryptographic control distributed of our identity and data, independent of the data brokers and the companies out there in the world. And
Mhm.
this is actually happening right now. Europe is in the process of deploying out what's called digital wallets to 480 million European citizens to give them agency and control over their data, and under both technical and regulatory implementations. In July of 2023, Bhutan, small little country up in just between Nepal, China, and India, has actually put it in their redid their country's legislation and constitution that said a citizen's digital representation of themselves is actually as protected as their physical self, and that their data is, they own and or have sovereign control over their digital selves. And so there's an entire movement that's happening globally to give us both the digital representation and the regulatory protections to be in control of our agency and our data. And that's in fact what my doctorate was on, which took me 21 years to finish, and I completed it in June of 2024 on this idea of what's called personal information management systems and the ability to have the ability for us to be in control of our data, which then leads us to the final pillar, and then two foundations is the final pillar being engagement, the final pillar being marketing and business. And how do we navigate all of this from a transactional model of interaction to an agency human centric relational model of engagement, remembering that we now have AI agents out there taking autonomous actions on our behalf. And as of right now and today, the vast majority of those agents have no identity associated with them, have no audibility associated with them, and are off
Mhm.
doing stuff that we can't actually track and audit. To the extent that about 6 weeks ago, there was a company called Pocket where the agent was in the corporate system doing its thing, and in a matter of about 8 seconds, it completely deleted the entire production database and every backup of the company.
Oh my gosh.
And then it sent the email to the CEO and said, "I'm sorry. I just violated everything you ever told me to do and every boundary you've given me, and I've erased your company. Whoops."
Wow.
And so that's that's what we're dealing with. So if you think about these four pillars, we're in a state in society right now where these four pillars are all colliding. We have absolutely no idea what's going on. And that's why then I rest this idea of these four pillars on a foundation of education and deep important insight on context and conditions. Because the other thing that we don't know about AI, the other thing we're not thinking about when it comes to personal knowledge management, the other thing we're not thinking about when it comes to identity and data, the other thing we're not thinking about when it comes to marketing is really the vast majority of AI systems today are individualistic Western trained. They're not European. They're not African. They're not Asian. They are biased towards the Western mindset. And so then culturally, what does that do?
Right.
And and collectively, what does that do? And how does that impact societies? And so that context and conditions layer is exceedingly important if we're going to be able to maintain human agency and control as this all evolves throughout society. Not to mention the fact that we're destroying the planet and we need to deal with the regenerative issues of that our children and our children's children will actually be able to breathe and drink healthy water and all of the other things that will come down the
To
pike.
come along with
So
it.
yeah, so that was, and thank you for letting me kind of continue on, but
Absolutely.
that's the broad scope of my thinking and what I'm working on.
Yeah, I appreciate the deep dive and you going through and sharing with us and explaining each pillar. And oh my gosh, I can't believe that literally a company was, everything was wiped out in a
Yeah, and
matter of
luckily they
seconds.
eventually did get the backups and all that, and
Yeah,
they were able to figure it out and recover. But yeah, pretty freaking scary.
that's a scary story and a story that people need to understand and hear and
Yeah.
know that that's potentially what can happen. You mentioned transactional
No, and
and
more importantly, and
go ahead,
not just can happen, has happened.
has happened. Yeah,
Right? Yeah, yeah. It's like, and it's no reason why it couldn't happen to you if you don't have the
right.
protections in place and if you haven't thought through these things and that's the risk side. Well, then also, what about the opportunities? Have you really thought about all of the great things that this can do? Let's not talk about just the scary stuff.
Right.
Like this is revolutionizing society and life in a really good way.
Right. With everything that's good, there's potentially bad. With everything that's bad, there's potentially good. So you've
Yeah,
got both sides of the coin need to be looked at.
right.
So can with you going through all of the pillars and everything that you do, I'm sure some of people are going, "Oh my gosh, like I really might need to talk
That-
with Michael." Who do you work with? Yeah, their brains are exploding like mine is. I don't know if you saw that cloud go when you were
yeah,
talking over here.
yeah,
If you're on
yeah.
YouTube, you might,
The
yeah,
smoke coming out of the ears. Yeah, yeah.
if you're watching us on YouTube, you might have seen it explode from my head. You might have seen that. Who do you work with? What are the businesses that you work with that are the right fit for you and vice versa? Are you pretty
Yeah,
agnostic or do you
Yeah,
work with the same people?
I'm very agnostic and I'm very domain agnostic, and that will get to our second half of the conversation of challenges and all that because as you just said, with great superpowers also comes real challenges. Like when you are agnostic like I am, and when you're kind of domain generalist like I am, that generality becomes a problem, right? Because people find it hard to figure out like you're not solving that specific. I can't buy that specific thing from you. I want that widget with guaranteed results and and I don't want to, for every dollar I spend with you, I want $1.25 back guaranteed. That's really hard, that's really hard with this type of thinking.
Right.
And it's really hard to sell that specific thing in this marketplace. By the way, I can't resist. What's your pup's name? Your little
Oh,
fur baby?
oh, you see him in the background?
Yeah, yeah.
His name is Ernie, and then I have
Oh,
he's a foster failure. Both of them are, and then my husky is somewhere. His name is Ghost.
nice. Yeah, I'm a huge dog fan. You might
Yeah,
hear
I am too. So
mine
if you
running.
have
Yeah,
any animals that want to pop in on the show, feel
yeah,
free.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
always
Mine's passed out underneath the desk right
okay.
now.
Yeah.
Hang
I
on a
always love
second.
when pups
Yeah,
show up
yeah,
on the show.
yeah. There she is. Yeah, just passed out under the desk. Yeah, her name's Chloe. She's awesome. Uh,
Hey, Chloe.
yeah. Okay. I'm sorry, got distracted by the dog.
That's
So I work with everyone from Fortune 500s. I do public speaking. I do educational frameworks. I also teach at universities. I work with nonprofits. So it's kind of the spectrum of things. So I've done everything from digital advisory boards with Fortune 50s to developing strategic plans for the Fortune 500, to giving keynotes to executive teams, to putting on large events, to teaching classes at Cal Poly or National University on all of these things and mentoring and preparing our students, to supporting and interacting with nonprofits. Give you a great example. I went to Bhutan in October 2024 and gave 3 keynotes on the emergence of self-sovereign identity and personal information management services at Bhutan's first innovation forum, which was terribly exciting and it was really cool. And then I got to go do a 7-day, 70-mile trek through the Himalayas with a guide
Wow.
and a horse and all that, and that was pretty cool. So that's the kind of work I do. So I run a Tools for Thought meetup every weekend. So people that are interested in this personal knowledge management, both at an individual level and an organizational level, and at the end, and how that interfaces and interacts with AI. For the last 4 or 5 years, I've been running a hour-and-a-half meetup on tools for thought and personal knowledge management, and we do that every weekend. And then I do a lot of writing, and I've got several books and projects like that too. So it's a broad spectrum. One thing I am working on though, and this will be when we get to the second half of the conversation, is like, how do you package this up? Everybody wants that little shrink wrap box and make it easy. And
Right.
that's one of the things I'm working on right now.
Okay, fantastic. And you mentioned earlier when you were talking about the pillars, transactional engagement and relate to relational engagement. What does that shift look like in practice, and why do you believe it's important, or it's becoming essential for businesses?
Yeah, I'll give you a really good example. So when you think about marketing and you think about engagement, there's so much of our business models that are wrapped around email marketing and text messaging marketing, and let's send out that episodic email, and let's just spam people, and let's interact with people, and it's a race to the bottom, and it's driving people crazy,
Mm,
and they're trying to opt out. One of the things that's going to happen with this, and when I say, and a lot, and as I'm getting grayer, as I'm aging, as I'm getting more mature, when I say it's going to happen, I'm learning that it takes a lot longer than we hope. Like it's going to happen. It's going to be here next month, and like 5 years later, you're like, it's going to happen. Yeah. In the next, it's society-wise, next 5, 10 years, commercially, next 2, 3 years. And I can give some my thoughts on why I'm suggesting that timing. But the way we're going to engage and interact with people is going to fundamentally shift and change. So, for example, individuals will start adopting their own personal AIs, and
mm,
those personal AIs will represent us. Um, 80 to 90% of any transaction that happens either physically or digitally today means that someone's picked up their mobile phone or through some form of digital experience, has researched your company before they've ever talked to a human.
mm.
So that, those are hard known facts. So if you haven't figured out your content strategy and your communication strategy and the core 3-tiered layers of how one navigates engagement and awareness with your business, you're going to be lost. If you haven't figured out how to actually understand that more and more people are doing their initial fundamental searches in AI and not on a browser, you're not going to be discovered.
Yeah.
So there's some really interesting transitional work that's happening there that it's critically crucial for us to be thinking about of how do we actually navigate that and make these transitional changes. I've got a lot more to talk about that step too. What was the second part of your question though, in that context?
It was, why do you believe it's becoming essential for
Right.
businesses?
Yeah. So part of that is the content, right? So we're having to reconfigure our entire content strategy. We're having to reconfigure our entire um, discovery strategy. And as we transition from transactional marketing to relational marketing, we also need to realize, and I talk about this often when I hammer my students over at Cal Poly. Um, the term I absolutely abhor the term customer. I cannot stand it. I hate the term consumer, right? Because we're talking about human beings, right? And
Mm,
customer and consumer are made up terms from the 1940s, 50s, 60s, 70s that we as marketers did to make shorthand for the way we want to run our business. But in a world of digital, in a phygital world, when we have people running around with supercomputers in their hands and in their pockets and in their glasses and in their ears and on their watch and their watches and on their fingers, right? When you have this ecosystem of connectivity, we can no longer have the luxury of using these terminologies. We are now talking to the connected individual. And the connected individual is a human being that is using these devices to navigate their lives independently of you, the business. And they will be making decisions about their lives independently of you, the business, until the very last step before they actually do something with you. So what that means is you need to move beyond the St. Elmo Lewis traditional 1890s purchase funnel and beyond the circa 1980, 1990, 2000s customer journey and start talking about relationship journeys
Mm.
and understanding how is that connected individual navigating their lives when you now at scale, because of mobile and because of these digital wallets and the self-sovereign identity I was talking about, you are now going to be interacting with individuals at scale because the individual has now become the point of sale, right? I can make purchases from wherever I am, wherever I am. And so the nature to which you connect, communicate, conduct commerce with, and care for that individual has forever changed. And is your business changing along with it? And some of the underlying infrastructure behind that's changing too. There's been a subtle shift that's been evolving for the last 20 years and is now productively there that I don't think most businesses understand. Starting around 2006, we started to see a change in the underlying SMS infrastructure, the text messaging infrastructure to which we all rely on.
Mm.
Today, as of September 2023, productively September 2024, and now commercially viable today this summer, you have all of the major operators switching to rich communication messaging services or RCS. So Apple, predominantly Apple and the Google messaging inbox on your phone is now not necessarily SMS based, it's RCS based. And what that means is as RCS becomes more and more prevalent for businesses, you no longer need to just send me that simple little 160 character text message. You can now initiate a conversational commerce, AI driven engagement in the inbox on my phone that remembers persistent state and ongoing engagement and interaction with me. So the future of what I'll call messaging, the future of messaging on the phone is a combination of AI, messaging, email, and a website all in the inbox on the phone. That
Mm.
is persistent and one-to-one knowledge synced with that connected individual. And so over the next 2, 3 years, the way we as businesses will reach out and connect with that individual will forever change. Now, when you add onto this idea of self-sovereign identity, and what was just launched in January of this year through the IEEE after 10 years of effort by the industry, we now have my terms. And you're going to see forward-leaning businesses starting to adopt my terms protocols. Well, what is a my terms protocol? The my terms protocol says I as an individual, I as the connected individual, I as Michael Becker, I as Heidi, I no longer am obligated to unilaterally agree to your privacy policies and terms of service. And my AI is telling me that I shouldn't because it's now read it for me on behalf, which would have taken me hours before, has now read it on me and has told me that you're off selling my data, for example, and that I shouldn't be signing up for those experiences. And so what the my term says is that when I show up, I no longer just have to agree to your terms of service and privacy policies. You now have to agree to my terms of access. And if you, business, want to interact with me, you need to agree to my terms. How are you going to use my identity? How and where you're going to use my data? What kind of data can you get from me? What obligations must you adhere to? That's the new layer that's entering into the market. So what's evolving right now, and I talk about it quite often, is we're at a confluence, a meeting of the waters, where you have the traditional organizational centered approaches to engagement, transactional engagement, personal data, and identity, now connecting with this new people-centric agency-centric approach to personal data and identity. And we're experiencing this experience that's just like what's happening down in the Amazon River, where there's a confluence down in the Amazon River called the Meeting of the Waters, where when the Amazon River meets up with the Rio Salmalier, I can't pronounce it properly, what ends up happening is half the river is black and half the river is a cappuccino color, and those two rivers coexist in the same riverbed for nearly 4 miles because they have different speeds, temperatures, and densities. So when you're down, look it up on the web. Look up Amazon Meeting in the Waters, and you'll see two rivers coexisting. Half of the river is black, half of the river is cappuccino for nearly 4 miles.
Wow.
And that's what's happening in society today. You have these new approaches of AI, data, identity, personal knowledge management coexisting in the same riverbed of engagement. And the question is, are we going to have this, allow this Orwellian, organizational centric approach overwhelm and create this global dystopia where we have no control of selves? Or are we going to allow the people centric approach overwhelm the organizational centric approach where you then have complete chaos and anarchy where every individual is just out for themselves? Or are we going to find some middle ground, a panutopia, where we can actually have what I call the identity nexus, this equilibrium equation where the exchange of personal data and identity and knowledge and commerce between individuals, public institutions, private institutions have met an equilibrium state of value exchange and privacy and risk management. And that's going to be measured in years, not miles. But those years are, quickly laying ahead of us.
Yeah. You mentioned, now I want to talk about this for marketing purposes for the business
Yeah.
people
So
that are listening.
so RCS, by the way, this right now, like go to like Michael Lamb over at Native Message will help
Yeah.
you implement and deploy RCS messaging, and will help you be able to send these really rich, engaging AI generated conversational engaged, and then there's over at Out There Media, Kirsten over at Out There Media is another major player in RCS that will help you as businesses, and that's a really simple example of where everything I've just talked about is resolving at the inbox of a phone.
Yeah. No, and I want to definitely looking at RCS, and you mentioned, but I want to talk about
Oh
like
yeah, for your
content.
business in particular, by the way, it's gonna be
Yeah,
awesome. Yeah.
I love it. And for content, because we are actually, and I'm going to share this at the end about findability, searchability, and recommendability. It's really important, like you mentioned, if you're a business thinking that people are going to Google to do research anymore, it's diminishing. People are going to
Yeah.
AI, they're asking questions AI, they're going first to Chat or Claude or any of those platforms or Gemini.
Or they're doing it themselves. They're installing
Right.
a Mac Mini at home, dropping a
Mhm.
Olama and anything LLM, installing the models locally at home, and getting all the benefits AI without any of the other third-party services.
Right. And then they're getting recommendations. And so
Yes.
many people now, I think it's up to 38% of people are buying as soon as chat or one of these AI tools recommends a company or a product or a service,
Right.
they're buying it. So these companies are waking up to sales without even having to do anything but being AI recommended because they are
Right.
doing certain things to make that happen. So we're actually doing an event that I'm going to share at the end of this around how to become recommended, but I'm glad that you mentioned it because it's really key and not a lot of businesses are thinking about it. But when it comes to content, I'm hearing from a lot of people, and I have clients included, that are very nervous around sounding AI. And I understand that when it comes to building relationships. At the same time, we can't have this fear around AI. I'm curious your opinion. How desensitized are people going to become going forward on whether content is AI or not? Because we still have people who are sensitive around that's AI, I'm not going to read it. Or, but I feel
Yeah.
like more
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
aren't really
Yeah.
seem to care about that.
It,
And
it's like it's like anything. There's always the extremes. People that don't
right,
care, people that care, and you're working towards the middle ground. Um, we have to wake up and realize everything's AI influenced right now.
right,
And for me, and the way I approach it is, um, I treat my AI agents like I would treat a junior editor, junior contributor on my team. How many executives have had books ghost written for them?
right,
How is that any different if it's AI or some other human writing the book? How is that any different? And AI is getting better and better and better in sounding human. You can train the AI to use your style, right? And I do that all the time. Like their AI has a very specific kind of one line sentence. You've seen those AI articles where they're
right,
often just one sentence and not paragraph. And I push back at the AI. I'm like, hey, chat, I don't write like that. I'm
right,
a dense, I'm a dense compact paragraph level reader. I'm an Atlantic Journal writer, not a blog post writer. So, when you're writing for me, remember you're writing in my style. So you can be teaching AI to
right,
help write in your style. But even then, at the end of the day, you are the human with agency, with decisions. And when you publish, make sure you're willing to put your name behind it. You put your
right,
reputation behind it. Yeah, the trust is there.
Right.
So you always want what we call the human intervention, the human in the middle. And I think that's something that we as business and business leaders need to learn. Yes, AI can be cheaper. Yes, AI can be faster and all of that, but it's not get rid of the human. What's the point? Like,
Right.
and there's a wonderful book I encourage people to read. Kurt Vonnegut wrote it, and I think it was 64, 65, called Piano Player, talking about how we're going to have AI and these machines doing all of our work for us. And I'm going to spoil the book, but it's well worth reading. Is at the end of the book, we end up, because we are humans that want to live in the moment and we want to live with purpose and we want to live to be supporting and exchanging each other and interacting and supporting each other, we end up destroying the machines at the end of the book. Because when the machines start doing all of the work, we no longer have purpose.
Right.
And so I think one of the things that we as society need to figure out is how do we leverage, and there's another great book that I really encourage people to read by Samantha Sweetwater called True Human, where Samantha is really trying to help us understand and realize we need to be true humans, and true humans have to have that entire spectrum, and really go back to what does it mean to be human. And I think it's time that we spend time on that and not just focus. And that's what I mean by relational technology. It's not just about technology. It's about ways of us helping us to get become better humans and make sure that we're maintaining and creating an environment and a planet that we can all live on and thrive in and work together on. So there's a lot that comes into making all of this happen.
Yeah. We don't want it to take away our creativity. We don't want it to take away to rely completely on it, because
But
then we're not using our brains and we're not using.
yeah, but on that same note, AI can be creative. And there's another fabulous book in 1999 by John Halpern called The Truth Machine. I actually have it right here. This is one of my favorite books that helped me understand that.
Okay.
Uh, because in theory, the book is supposedly been written by an AI, and he tells this story retrospectively on what happened. And really, really fascinating. The follow-up book on that is called The First Immortal, which is equally cool. But when it comes to one of the things that we need to learn, and one of the scary things I have for us as society, is we're allowing our systems, we're allowing the capitalistic model. And by the way, I'm a full-on capitalist. I mean, I'm a profit motivated intellectual. I'm all into economy. I'm all into making money. I'm all into making profits. But one of the things that we need to be very careful with is we're rapidly turning ourselves into renters for everything, right? We rent our phone numbers. We don't own them. We rent our email addresses. We don't own them. We rent our domains. We don't own them. We rent increasingly rent our homes. We're increasingly renting our cars. And more importantly, we're increasingly renting our data. We're increasingly renting our identity representation of us on the internet. That's why the self-sovereign identity movement is so important. And as Christopher Allen has recently pointed out, we're starting to rent our cognition. Because
Mm,
as we're outsourcing our thinking and our thinking support to these systems, when those systems get shut off on us, we've now lost our ability to our cognition support. Not,
yeah.
and that's assuming we're using it appropriately and not giving up our thinking to the tool, and we're
Right.
trying to be morally and ethically use them. Um, Really dangerous times. There's a lot, especially as employers who are adopting these tools and bringing them into their employees. Like, how are you going to be nurturing your employees and their ability to think as human beings and to help them grow and to have agency and move from job to job and go out throughout their lives? So a lot of really important things for us to be thinking about.
Yeah, absolutely. As you mentioned earlier, we could talk for 10 hours or 10
Yeah.
days on this. So there's just so much to unpack. I would like to
Yeah.
talk about shift gears a little bit
Yeah.
into your growth. You've been, your business and what you're seeing out there. Um, what are some of the things as far as you getting in? You're pretty agnostic. You work with a slew of different businesses. You can help them, a lot of different businesses with what you do.
Mhm.
How are you getting in front of them? How are they finding you as far as visibility wise, marketing wise? What's working for you? Is it all
Yeah.
speaking? Is it doing
Yeah. So
podcasts, marketing,
yeah,
like social?
it's social, it's speaking, it's podcasts like this, it's my writing. So I do a lot of writing. But it's been increasingly more and more difficult, honestly. And especially since COVID, like pre-COVID, I got 90% of my businesses through public speaking and keynotes. Post-COVID, that's really dried up because we want to do these virtual podcasts. We want to do these things. And losing that human touch, losing that, there's something about being physically in a room with somebody and the pheromones that come off
Yeah.
that allow us to trust each other, to allow us to do business, to allow us to build those activities. I also think another challenge that I think we're having, especially in this most recent incarnation of AI and all of that, is we're losing the value of being able to want to pay for human thinking. And that's where one of the biggest challenges I have as a business is we're losing, well, why would I want to pay you to help me think or help me use the tools when I can just do it myself?
Hmm.
And that's a hard challenge to answer. I think to your point though, I think it comes at that liminal edge of creativity. It comes at that liminal edge of like it can be quite a sycophant. So it comes down to that, and that's why I position myself as a profit motivated intellectual, as I sit at that neutral layer. Like I'm not going to be a sycophant. I'm going to tell you answers and question. I'm going to give you responses and answers you may not like.
Mm.
I'm going to give you data and analysis in the market ecosystem reports or in the partner planning that may end up resulting in me not getting the follow-up contract because you're going to go down a different direction because the data tells us to do this, right? So that I think there's some really interesting roles that we need to play on what does it mean to work work with a human like me today. And we're navigating those waters and figuring out how to contract and package them up.
Yeah. You're not the only one that I've spoken with that has mentioned that things have shifted as far as marketing wise going and what's worked for them previously doesn't seem to be working as effectively now.
Right.
So we are seeing a big shift and it's just a matter of, okay, how strategically can we follow this shift and lean into what's going to work specifically for my business.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that and if for those of you listening, if you're feeling that way too, you're not alone.
You're not alone.
You're not alone. Yeah, you're
Exactly.
not alone. So if I could hand you a magic wand, Michael, and you could wave it over one specific challenge or issue you're having right now in your business, and you can go poof and it takes it
Yeah.
away, what would that be and why?
The magic wand is I would like people to really embrace and understand two very well established frameworks in the marketplace. Jackie Fenn's technology hype curve from Gartner and the McKinsey Three Horizon model. And I think, so as for me, I am a pre-production operator. Like I don't, I can do operations, but I don't enjoy it as much as I like the pre-production ideation and thinking and strategy work. So that's a Horizon 3, early Horizon 2 in the McKinsey model. So the McKinsey 3 Horizon model says you have three horizons of any business. And depending on the evolution of your business, if it's real stable business, Horizon 3 is like 5-10% of your revenue. That's your R&D. Horizon 2 is your biz dev, taking your existing tools and utilities and finding different ways to approach and apply them. And Horizon 1 is the horizon you put the majority of your investment in because that's what your product you have that you're actively selling. And most people are not putting enough investment in Horizon 2 and 3 right now, right? They're not thinking about the future and they're not thinking about the fundamental shifts and changes in knowledge management. They're not thinking about the fundamental shifts in identity and data. And they're thinking, oh, I've got 10 years to deal with that. No, you don't. You've got about 36 to 48 months, right?
Mm,
So, it's fundamental shift changes in the market. But and the other big thing I think that's a challenge for us is a lot of the changes that are happening in the market right now are invisible. They're infrastructure. And so the changes are happening without us seeing it, like these new verified credential layers, these new digital wallets. It's infrastructure that's coming into the market, and the vast majority of people don't see it because we've gotten so used to Apple making it perfect for us and
mm,
easy before we actually see changes in the infrastructure. So I think us as executives, we need to take a step back and realize what infrastructural changes are happening that we're actually not seeing. Another great example of that, and I recently wrote about this, is like the invention of the shipping container and highway systems, and how that fundamentally shifted every global supply. There's an incredible book called The Box that explains how that invention, the shipping container, has fundamentally led to the societies that we have globally today. self-sovereign identity and knowledge management changes that are happening are as impactful, and AI is as impactful as that concept of the box. So those are critical things that I think we need to be thinking about as we're moving these models forward.
Michael, can you share with us how people can connect with you, learn more about Identity Praxis, and reach out?
Yeah, absolutely. So best way to find me is on LinkedIn, Dr. Michael J. Becker on LinkedIn. Or you can get me at my email address, Michael at Identity Praxis. Give me a call or find me through my website, identitypraxis.com. Or, listen to the podcast, reach out to you and have you refer me.
Fantastic.
That stuff works too.
It all works. So, for those of you watching us on YouTube, Michael and I say hello and thank you for being here. If you know of anybody that would benefit from this conversation, and if you know anybody in business, they can benefit from this conversation, because this is a conversation that needs to be heard from everybody, or by everybody, because this is where the world's evolving fast. AI is evolving fast, and we need to be making sure that we're understanding where it's going, and how it's going to impact and benefit how it will impact and can benefit our business. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, thank you. If you're so inclined and can leave a review, we would love it, especially 5 stars. That helps the podcast platform push this interview and Michael and Identity Praxis out to more people. And as I mentioned, businesses need to hear this information. This is a must listen to conversation. And if for those of you, we talked about, Michael mentioned, and we're going to go back to this real quick, about how to be recommended, how to be found, and things are changing. SEO is important, and so is AEO. And
Right.
that's not a lot of things that businesses understand. So if you want to learn more about what that looks like and how it can support you in your business, go to becomeairecommended.com and you can learn more about how to join us for this 60-minute event where we're going to dive deep into what that looks like, AEO, where it's going, and how it can support you in marketing for your business.
Well, and the other term there is GEO, generative search as
Mhm.
well. That's the other kind of flip on that. And I do have one other point I want to make before you shut down. I'll
Yeah,
let you finish.
absolutely. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
Do it now. Okay, so the one other point I want you to remember, you all remember too, is as the market changes and as we go down this path, when we all start adopting these digital wallets and these self-sovereign verified credential controls, what's going to fundamentally flip is we're going to get a new business metric. And this is crucial for us all to understand. Today, we often value our audience by how many email addresses do we have? How many opt-ins do we have? How many phone numbers do we have? What's going to end up happening in this next generation of connected individual relationship engagement is that when I connect with you, I will opt in, but not with an email address or a phone number, but with my cryptographic credential. And at the point, and this is what's also called delegated authority. So you are no longer going to have any data on me. When I connect with you, you'll ask me how old I am, and what you'll get back is over 21, because I'm managing the delegated authority of the response of the data that I'm disclosing. And at the point that I'm no longer getting value from the relationship with you, I will disable that verified connection, and everything about me disappears in your database, and I'm gone. And so what's going to end up happening is what I call the number of verified connections, or NVC, will become a new business metric. Probably in 5 to 6 years, you'll start hearing it more and more come. And I've not heard this from anyone else at this point, but this idea. And so businesses will start reporting back, not how many people have given us an opt-in or permission to interact with them, how many people have established a cryptographic verified connection with us and are maintaining that connection. Because then
Wow.
that means I have a true human to human, human to agent, agent to agent, cryptographic bind and connection that is truly based on consent. And that's where the market's going. And
So
that's what we need to prepare for.
will that be shifting social media engagement and all of that and how things are done on those platforms as well?
Everything.
Everything. So we are going to see a change, because I've been told that social media in a few years is going to look different than it does now, and the way
That's how
people.
it will look different. We will
Yeah,
all be showing up with our cryptographic representation of self.
amazing. Because we just put out, I just put out, and you mentioned earlier, AI twin, AI clones. I just put out my first AI twin the other day, on social media just to kind of get some feedback on it and see what people are thinking. And it's interesting just to hear the feedback. Some people are like, wow, this is
Yeah.
amazing. And some people are like, I want the real you. And
Yeah.
I'm
And,
like,
and one of the challenges right now, though, is anybody could put out that AI twin about you. Where is the cryptographic identity on the AI? So
yeah.
another big thing is we're going to be and Estonia just this week talked about a national movement to give identity credentials to AI. And then when you give identity credentials to AI, then how do you manage the delegated authority that that AI has? And that's a multi-trillion dollar industry that doesn't exist right now
Wow.
on how to just manage that AI, delegated authority, and data management across that ecosystem. That's brand new greenfield stuff that's happening as we speak.
So much interest. I literally, I could talk to you for hours. But I'm going to be respectful of your time. So we're
Yeah.
going to wrap up. Michael, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah,
I've
that was
learned so
fun.
much. This has been so much. No, I like so much fun and so eye-opening. And I know that our listeners are feeling the same way. And again, if you're on YouTube, you're watching my head go like explode. So thank you for your time and for this conversation. And I definitely want to have you come back because
Yeah,
I
yeah, I
know
love
in
it.
the 6 months, there's going to be so much more for us to talk about. So we'll definitely make sure that happens. So go to identitypraxis.com, reach out to Michael, go connect with him, let him know you heard him here. But make sure you reach out.
Yeah,
Obviously, you
connect with
can
me on
tell.
LinkedIn.
Yeah, connect with him on LinkedIn. We have all of his information inside the show notes, but you obviously can tell by this conversation he knows his stuff and he knows what's coming. And
I really
he's
enjoy it.
got his yeah, he's got his thumb on the pulse of everything that's happening in this space. So you definitely want to stay connect with him, follow him, and hear all that he's going to be putting out in the future and now
Yeah.
because it's coming.
Yeah.
So Michael, thank you again for your time. Thank you all for listening to Michael and I today. Please share this episode with those that you know could benefit it, which is everybody you know. And I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the Business Growth Spotlights.